Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Well, good evening and welcome to inFocus here on WVCY Channel 30 as we keep you informed on a number of issues that are impacting us as a community, as a state, as a church body as well. Once a month we have a legislative focus and certainly give a roundup as to what's happening legislatively in our state with an update on important information. Tonight will be no exception. This is our monthly legislative update. We're going to be talking about a number of things tonight, including the impact of redistricting here in the state of Wisconsin, the statewide constitutional amendments that are going to be on our ballots upcoming. We'll be talking about some tax breaks that have been vetoed by Governor Evers, as well as a proposal to create an Office of Equity and Inclusion and a proposal to ban so-called conversion therapy in the state of Wisconsin, and certainly a significant decision coming from the United States Supreme Court today. Joining us here on inFocus, we welcome Jelaine Appling, President Emeritus of Wisconsin Family Council. Good evening, Jelaine.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
And I mentioned President Emeritus because you're working through a transition at Wisconsin Family Council.
We are, Jim. A couple of years ago, I gave our board notice that by the end of 2024, I thought it was time for new leadership for our organization. So we did a nationwide search, and lo and behold, we found somebody right here in Wisconsin who is now the president as of February 19th. Christine Feil comes to us from Hillsdale with a Hillsdale grad, a JD, a law degree from Regent, and a master's degree from Regent University. She has a wonderful background, lots of passion and energy to bring to this. So it's really a generational change as well. But we're excited, and we're in the process now of transitioning after 26 and a half years of being the president and the leader of this organization, and Wisconsin Family Action too.
Sure.
So we're excited about it, and it's going well. It's busy and it's big.
And knowing Jelaine Appling, you're still going to have your hands in a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Great.
No plans to walk away.
Very good. Well, good to have you with us tonight. Certainly there was some significant news coming from the United States Supreme Court today pertaining to keeping Donald Trump on the ballot. State of Colorado had passed legislation to knock him off the ballot. Maine had done the same thing, and then also the state of Illinois just recently had passed a measure to take him off the ballot. Other states were in the hanging in the balances on this, but today the court came out with quite a decision impacting this election.
Well, they did. And look, Wisconsin actually questioned whether he should be on the ballot. And our state Supreme Court said, yeah, he should be on the ballot. So today we have the definitive answer from the U.S. Supreme Court to say, look, we may not agree with him. We may think he's going to end up in jail. I mean, that's essentially where some of these justices are. But he should be on the ballot. There's no justification for him not being able to be on the ballot. And they chose the Colorado case. As you mentioned, they could have chosen a number of other cases. This is part of the liberal strategy. You know, I was thinking about this, Jim. The liberals do many things well. They really do. And one of the things they do really well is confusion. And this is the kind of confusion they like to create. And so essentially now we have a definitive answer from this U.S. Supreme Court, and I don't think other states will keep trying. And because, as you said, this was a pretty strong statement from the court. 9-0
was a decision. Here's a quote that comes right from the release from the Supreme Court today. A group of Colorado voters contends that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits former President Donald J. Trump, who seeks the presidential nomination of the Republican Party in this year's election, from becoming president again. The Colorado Supreme Court agreed with that contention. It ordered the Colorado Secretary of State to exclude the former president from the Republican Party ballot in the state, to disregard any write-in votes that Colorado voters might cast for him. Former President Trump challenges that decision on several grounds. Because the Constitution makes Congress rather than the states responsible for enforcing Section 3 against federal office holders and candidates, we reverse. Is their statement. Just looking at a couple other notes here. On page 12, they say responsibility for enforcing this, again, rests with Congress and the states, and says that the judgment of Colorado here is not going to stand. Then all 9 members of the court. And then I just want to, the judgment of the Colorado Supreme Court is reversed, but an interesting statement from Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And here's what she said. In my judgment, this is not the time to amplify disagreement with stridency. The court has settled a politically charged issue in the volatile season of a presidential election. Particularly in this circumstance, writings on the court should turn the national temperature down, not up. For present purposes, our differences are far less important than our unanimous decision here. Our all 9 justices agree on the outcome of this case. This is a message Americans should take home.
Well, that's a good point. And, you know, I hope it ratchets down the level of contention that we have going into this presidential election year. Quite honestly, Jim, it looks like it's going to end up being Trump and Biden at this point anyway. I see all kinds of opportunities for this to kind of grow into a huge conflagration before we're done. Hopefully, American people, seeing a 9-0 decision that Trump can be on the ballot, will take her advice and say, okay, we're going to kind of not inflate this thing and not ignite this thing any more than we have to. So, like it, love him or hate him, they didn't have grounds for removing Donald Trump from a ballot.
Right, and some from the far most conservative justices to the far most liberal justices all saw that same.
We haven't seen a 9-0 vote from that court for a while.
It's been a while, but and one of the strangest cases they did a 9 was Matt Stavers on the shirtlift decision out of Massachusetts. But it showed how absurd it was for Massachusetts to not allow the Christian flag to fly. You know, we're going to be dealing a lot with different elections tonight, and not only do we talk about public policy here in Wisconsin, but what's taking place in the big picture. And this caught my attention here, the nation's first ever trans voting center to open. This is a California primary, and opening doors this past Saturday. Los Angeles County, March 2 to March 5, open to all Californians. The center is mainly focusing on creating a safe environment for the LGBT community to vote in. And then, Julian, it says, by providing a safe and affirming place for the transgender community to exercise their fundamental right to vote, we are breaking down barriers and ensuring every Californian has equal access to the ballot box. Isn't this over the top?
I want one for me. Come on, California.
Yeah.
California is so edgy. First of all, the polling places are safe for everyone. There's no one, when you go into the polling place, they don't ask you what your gender identity is. They don't ask you what your employment status is or anything. You come in, you're registered or you're not registered, you're a valid voter, you're not. This is just to hype the transgender agenda and to make it look, Jim, like somehow they have every reason to be afraid. They have no reason to be afraid. People have not. They want special rights and protections, and that's California playing right into their hands.
And, Julian, I mean, we're not going to go this direction tonight, but we've seen some horrible mass killings that have been transgender initiated, and so you're right when it comes to, well, how about Me Too? Let's have a special voting place for just born-again believers or for just people of one skin color, one ethnicity, and that's why I say, how far is this going to go?
Well, California will take everything further than what you think it's going to go, and that's the nature of California. First of all, I don't know that every state's law would allow for this kind of thing, because I don't know that our law does. I mean, we kind of tell people where the polling places can be, although we made them up in 2020, I guess. But this is just all over. This is agenda driven. It is trying to make people believe that the trans people are downtrodden, oppressed, are subject to hatred and vitriol and all the rest of that. And they're not. If anything, they're given special rights and protections everywhere they go. So let's hope the rest of the nation doesn't follow California.
Well, we'll put that one behind us here, but focus on our election. We have one coming up. The primary is over with. April 2nd is an important spring election and presidential preference primary.
It is. And I talked to somebody today. He said, you guys are kind of confusing. Do you have 3 primaries? I said, well, we kind of do have 3 primaries. We had the February one, and then we have the presidential preference primary in our spring general, and then we have the fall one. But it is, every election is important, every vote in every election is important, and elections have consequences. So April 2nd, people can go to the polls. They're going to choose which presidential preference, which party they want to vote in the presidential preference primary. They can only vote in one. If they vote on the Republican side, they can't vote on the Democrat side or whatever other party. They have to choose. They can only vote for one candidate within that. And then also on their ballot are going to be all these local elections for mayors and city council and town and village boards and school boards all over the state. You know, usually at this April election, Jim, there's over 10,000 candidates on the ballot. We don't have any statewide candidate race this time But we do have a couple of other things on there that help make people confused about what's going to be on that ballot, in addition to the presidential preference primary.
Okay, so people have to declare their party for that, and then turn all of a sudden nonpartisan to vote on all the other spring elections there. And
but it's all on one ballot.
All on one ballot, and can be very confusing. So people need to take note. And I should mention this: that on election eve, April 1st, you're scheduled to be back here on inFocus, where we'll go through the ballot and so forth here once again. But friends, because we are just weeks away, less than a month away from the election, we do want to make you aware of a couple of referendum questions that are statewide questions that are on the ballot. So every one of you will have this ballot question coming up on April the 2nd. Question number 1. Use of private funds in election administrations. Shall Section 7, Parent 1 of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that private donations and grants may not be applied for, accepted, expended, or used in connection with the conduct of any primary election or referendum? You'll have to mark yes, or you'll have to mark no. Before we move on, explain this one for us, if you would.
Okay, this question and the next one both refer to the Zuckerbucks. Okay, 2020. Remember the Zuckerbucks? I know you do. Millions of dollars came in from liberal organizations, national level, poured into states like Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, they went to Milwaukee, they went to Madison, they went to Green Bay, they went to Racine, and they went to Eau Claire. And it was millions of dollars that they poured in to, quote, help the local municipal clerks run the 2020 elections. And the money was, who knows how it was used. What we know is in some cases it was used to drive a certain segment of the population to the polls, to the exclusion of other segments of the population. So what question 1 does is it says, do you want to have a situation where outside money comes into Wisconsin, goes to certain election centers or municipal clerks, if you will, or do you want our clerks to be able to solicit that money or in any way receive it or use it in order for us to run our elections? If you say yes on this, you're saying, I want to stop this kind of thing. I don't want Zuckerbucks. Again, if you say no, you're saying, I'm okay with what happened. That's essentially what you're saying. I don't care where the money comes from or how it gets here. I think the clerks should be able to use it. That's really what it comes down to.
Now, friends, a number of you will do early voting or absentee voting, and so you're going to be receiving your ballots soon. Early voting happening just another, week from tomorrow, happening here in our state, or shortly thereafter, or 2 weeks. But let me just say that you need to know the information so you're ready to respond accordingly on this. Later, we'll be opening our phone lines, and if you have questions, you're welcome to ask those. There's also a second question, Jelaine, as well. And question number 2 on the ballot, I'm going to have you read that for us here tonight.
Sure. Question number 2, election officials. Shall Section 7, Parent 2 of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that only election officials designated by law may perform tasks in the conduct of primaries, elections, and referendums? And we have the option for a yes response or a no response.
If you would explain that one for us as well.
Well, this is still related to those Zuckerbucks, because when that money came in from those outside organizations, from national level organizations, people came with the money too. And they came to clerks in Brown County, they came to clerks in Madison and Milwaukee and other places and said, hey, we'll help you run your elections. And in some instances, we know, and Brown County is the most glaring example of this, the clerk was taking instructions from this outside person who was coming in and saying, well, no, this is what you need to do to get people to vote and all that kind of thing. So what question 2 is saying is, look, we aren't going to allow anyone other than an official election, a legally designated election official, and we know who they are. They're municipal clerks and people like that, to be able to be engaged in the process of conducting our elections. So a yes vote on this says, I don't want a repeat of what happened in 2020 with these outsiders coming into Wisconsin, influencing our clerks, taking over at points the election process away from the clerks, and so I'm going to vote yes. If you vote no on question 2, what you're saying is, I don't care who comes to Wisconsin and runs our elections. What difference does it make to me?
Right.
I mean, that's essentially what you're saying.
So the first one, they're really dealing more with the money, and then the personnel or the help, so to speak, coming alongside and running that election.
Exactly.
So
they split it into two because what's interesting here, Jim, is they can both pass. They have to just a simple majority vote. They can both pass, they can both fail, or they can pass one and fail the other. So we could end up with one part of that and not have the second part. So.
Okay. Well, those are on everybody's ballot here across the state of Wisconsin, regardless of where one lives. Now, there are also going to be referendum questions for individual school districts. We're going to focus on Milwaukee here this evening because there's quite a significant one that is on the ballot. But keep in mind, there's going to be many, many school districts that have referendum. So here is a Milwaukee public school question, and it's a doozer, folks. Shall Milwaukee Public Schools, Milwaukee and Washington counties, Wisconsin, be authorized to exceed the revenue limit specified in Section 121.91 of Wisconsin statutes by $140 million for the 2024-25 school year by an additional $51 million for the 25-26 school year, by an additional $47 million for the 26-27 school year, and $14 million for a total of $252 million for the 2027-2028 school year and thereafter, for the recurring purposes of sustaining educational programming, including offering career and technical education programs, attracting and retaining certified educators, and further improving art, music, physical education, and language programs. Yes or no? Julaine, the net result of this is a massive spending bill. This would add like $400 to the average Milwaukee household, their income taxes, if their house is assessed at $200,000 or more.
Right. As you said, this is a doozy. $252 million over the next 3 to 4 years they want to add. They say that they're not getting enough money from the taxpayers.
Didn't Governor Evers just add a whole bunch?
Well, he added more than what we wanted, that's for sure. But
Right.
he did give, the legislature actually in the budget put a sizable increase for all school systems in Wisconsin.
So this is on top of that.
This is on top of that. Milwaukee Public Schools are saying, hey, if you just give us $252 million more than what we're already getting over this next 3 to 4 school years, then we're going to do all these things. But we can't do this. We can't hire, we can't attract and retain certified teachers, and we can't do an effective art program, and we can't do technical education programs if we don't have that. That's a bunch of baloney. First of all, Milwaukee, I believe, has one of the highest per pupil expenditure rates of any place in our state. What are we getting for that?
Lower test scores.
Well, yeah, you compare Milwaukee test scores to the public schools test scores to the choice schools, and Milwaukee looks pretty bad on some of that, especially in core areas like English and math. So the taxpayers in Milwaukee, Jim, are already looking at what kind of product is being produced by the Milwaukee Public Schools. And overall, they're not happy. And I think businesses are saying, you're not giving us students who are ready. The money's not the issue. That's not the issue. You know, I've asked educators over the years, how much would it take? How much would it take for you to believe you can really do the job? And the only answer I've repeatedly gotten is, well, we aren't sure, but it's more.
Yeah.
So where's the end of more?
Right.
It's because $252 million in 4 years, how much are you going to ask for after that?
Right. Exactly.
So at what point does a taxpayer say, sorry, our pockets are not as deep as you think they
Right.
are, and we're not going to keep taking the hit, especially when we're not getting a product.
Julaine, let's look at what happened to the city of Milwaukee just recently here too. The sales tax increase, I mean, just went up a couple of percent in the city, plus Milwaukee County put up another 0.4%. So city of Milwaukee individuals are paying, if you're going to shop in the city, what is it, 7.9% sales tax now. That's on top of this, and that's on top of when the Common Council says, okay, you know what, we're going to now put this item, like a streetlight fee on your water bills. We're going to now put a stormwater fee on your water bill, or a snow plowing fee on your water bill, taking it off the property tax. And so none of that becomes deductible, but it has been a vicious cycle. And now we've got the Milwaukee City Mayor and the County Executive, both that are getting behind and backing this.
Well, there has to be some kind of end to this in Milwaukee, Jim.
Yeah.
There really does. You're putting such a burden on the taxpayers in the Milwaukee public schools, and people that live in Milwaukee County, people that live in the city of Milwaukee. There comes a point, I mean, look, we had a revolution in 1776 in part over taxation without representation. I think we're approaching it here in Milwaukee. And not only that, but the state legislature has wrestled with this. You know, in the fall, a year ago fall, they were talking about Milwaukee going bankrupt. And the state legislatures tried to step in and say, look, you know, we'll help, but we're not going to bail you completely out. You need to do something to help yourself.
I think they get pay increases.
Well, they did. But one thing they did do is they tried to compromise with the state legislature. But when I see things like this referendum, I wonder who's listening.
Right.
Because this money, it's very frustrating to me as an educator. Money does not make a good teacher. And most people won't go to a job just for money, right? Job satisfaction is a lot more than money. So to try to say we can't get good teachers here because we aren't paying them enough.
Again, let's look at the choice schools, the private schools, the private Christian schools. Let's look at what's going on with homeschooling in the state. Not even fractions of money like what they're doling out here, and yet the educational byproduct is significantly different.
Right. Yeah. And so the city of Milwaukee is going to have a wake-up call here at some point. In the middle of all this, what do we have? Escalating crime. Right. So there's a confluence coming. There's got to be some kind of a perfect storm that's brewing out there.
Well, friends, let me just mention again, if you're in the city of Milwaukee, that's going to be on your ballot. The other questions that we referred to about the Zuckerbucks, that's on everybody's ballot. The only way you're going to find out what's on your ballot is perhaps by going to the state's website, myvote.wi.gov, myvote.wi.gov. And you click on the little blue tab there. You can register, but there's one called What's on My Ballot. You click on the What's on My Ballot. You put in your address, your zip code, and then you do the search or the find box, and up comes your sample ballot so you can see what's exactly on your ballot. You'll see the presidential preference primary there. You'll see all the local races that you have, including municipal judges, or if you have an appellate court judge. You'll also find the referendum questions there too, myvote.wi.gov. And Jelaine, it's really imperative for people to go to the polls with knowledge so they don't get there and say, oh my, I didn't know this was here. What is this question all about? I think I better just leave it blank because I don't know.
Well, voting ignorantly is very, very dangerous. So, you know, myvote.wi.gov, I think, is one of the best things the state has given us in a while, right? Especially from the Wisconsin Elections Commission. It really is helpful. We think that all across the state, sample ballots are up now, and it doesn't take long. You just go in there as you gave the instructions, look at the ballot, figure out what the issues are, who the candidates are, and then start paying attention to what's going on in your community. You know, in my community, we've got school board race. That's a big thing going on right now. We have 5 candidates for 3 seats. And I'm looking all over town, and I'm seeing the signs starting to pop up. I'm hearing about panels that are happening, interviews that are showing up in the local paper. That's incredibly important for people to understand that they can get informed. So I hope people will, early enough to do that. Okay, so again, Jelaine will be back on election eve, Lord willing, and we'll be going through this ballot again. But again, if you are early voting or if you are voting by absentee, you're going to need to know what these are about prior to going and casting your vote. Speaking of voting, Jelaine, and not to complicate things even further, but we're going to complicate them further because there have been issues that have come up now before the state legislature as far as redistricting is concerned. And Governor Evers has signed his maps in. They're maps that were opposed to one another. The Supreme Court was going to put their sanction on something if the two couldn't come together, but they did come together. We now have new maps. That does not affect our spring election, correct? No. These are just for the Assembly and the Senate. The only thing that's right now in play. But they do affect those 2024 elections. Now, the state, by the way, Jim, I don't know if you knew this, but if you go to legis.wisconsin.gov, there's the new maps are overlaid over the old maps. So now we can start having some comparison on that. So very much affecting, for instance, 11 sets of Republicans are in head-to-head communities, meaning a Republican incumbent is facing a Republican incumbent for a seat in the state legislature under these new maps. They've pitted them together. In the Senate, we have, go ahead.
I'm just going to go ahead on the Senate, because there's a situation where Senator Dewey Strobel and Dan Knodel are now head-to-head. Right. And so Mr. Knodel just announced, I'm going to run for the Assembly instead of that Senate seat.
Well, and he's going to run for the Assembly against an incumbent, against Janelle Brandtjen. And in the Senate, we have a situation where we have 3 senators in one district that are actually kind of head-to-head. So how many are Democrats went head-to-head? 1 set. So, I mean, that tells you, Governor Evers, I'm going to do independent, nonpartisan maps.
Right.
So the whole point of the legislature was to say, okay, if we wait for the courts to give us this map, it's going to be the worst map ever. They're going to take the worst one. So we'll jump ahead and we'll take Evers' maps. We'll get those approved. He passes them. And because that's the best of the worst, right? Mm-hmm. And so now we have all of these maps that are very partisan still, 11 assembly districts, 3 Senate districts with head-to-head Republicans, and one, I believe it's 1 in the Assembly and 1 meaningless one in the Senate, because Melissa Agard in the Senate is running for county exec in Dane County. So she's out of the picture. So it doesn't even, it's actually more of an open seat there for that. So these maps are partisan. I don't care how you cut that, Jim. In my opinion, they're very partisan. But that's what we're going to have to look at now. The big confusion is, because you have all these head-to-head matchups, are they going to move? Are these incumbents going to move to another district? We're hearing some that are. Mine's moving into a different seat to get a different city to stay in part of his old district. So they're having to make major decisions about, where am I going to live? Am I going to run against another Republican? Is it worth it? And these 2 Republicans are saying, which one of us is going to back down? Are we going to both go at it?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, so voters understand, none of that will be finalized until early June, which is when they have to have their complete declaration of candidacy in with their signatures, and then they have to be approved by Wisconsin Elections Commission to get on the ballot. So we won't really know how it's going to all fall out.
Well, it's my position that all happened accidentally on purpose, and to create the confusion. And as you indicated, it is very partisan in nature. And this really, in my opinion, too, is a subversion of what our statutes say as to who draws the legislative boundaries for the state of Wisconsin. Well,
what it is, but I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. If there's anything that the liberals are good at, it's confusion. And isn't that part of the whole, community organizing? And it's to keep people off balance and to keep people wondering. Because if you get them confused enough, they say, oh, it's just too confusing, it's too hard to unravel, I'm just not voting.
Yeah, and well, there's an attempt to make it even more confusing, because the Wisconsin Supreme Court was petitioned to also redraw the congressional boundaries in the state.
Yeah, I actually thought we might get a pass on that they wouldn't bring it up. But oh no, they can't miss an opportunity for that, so they petitioned the Supreme Court. And fortunately, the Supreme Court said, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So that's off the table. And the congressional, just to make sure everybody knows, there's 8 congressional districts that are boundaries, and those are going to stay exactly like they are for the 2024 election.
Okay, so that's going to impact us more, ladies and gentlemen, for the fall elections. So stay tuned as that issue is covered here in the days to come. Well, not only was the Wisconsin Supreme Court petitioned to redraw those congressional maps as well, but they also have been petitioned to protect what they call the right to kill your unborn child by Planned Parenthood petitioning the Wisconsin Supreme Court to really act upon giving a constitutional right to take the life of that baby in the womb.
Well, they did. Last week, the Planned Parenthood announced that they had asked the state Supreme Court to clarify whether our state constitution had protected, from their perspective, the right to an abortion. And I put it this way, a right to an unfettered an unfettered right to abortion, meaning up to the time of birth. Okay? So this is very interesting. What does it mean for the court to clarify? First of all, they're basing it on the very early part of our state constitution, which makes it clear that we have inherent rights that include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. Now, the term that Planned Parenthood uses is the right of self-determination. I don't know, Jim. You say the right of self-determination in life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness? Because it seems to me they left out the most important, most fundamental right in that list of three. They're trying to construe a right to self-determination in the liberty and personal happiness, but they conveniently left out life.
Yeah.
But this is interesting because Josh Call, you know, we have this other case down there on the pre-roll abortion ban that's before the court. So Joel Urmanski, the DA from Sheboygan, had also petitioned the Supreme Court to take the Dane County Court case where the judges said, no, that doesn't apply to abortion, it applies to feticide. So Joel Urmanski had asked the Supreme Court to take that directly. Well, Josh Call said, yeah, take that case. And oh, by the way, when you take that case, let's also decide the constitutional issue that Planned Parenthood is asking. So Josh Call tied that case that's already in the court system, he tied this constitutional question to it. Wow. So now we have these two things kind of competing at the state Supreme Court level. So we'll see. I asked a couple of attorneys, what does it mean when you ask the Supreme Court to clarify? They don't have any case. They don't have a case based on the Planned Parenthood one. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. And of course, we have Janet Protasewicz on there who campaigned all last spring saying, I support a woman's right to freedom, to health care freedom, reproductive freedom.
Yeah.
So this is where the liberals are taking advantage of the 4-3 liberal court right now.
Jelaine Appling, our guest here tonight, President Emeritus of Wisconsin Family Council. It's our monthly legislative update. And Jelaine, one more item here on elections for right now, and that is an announcement that came out from Eric Hovde. He is going to throw his hat in the ring for the Republican nomination against Tammy Baldwin.
So U.S. Senate race coming up in the fall, and Eric Hovde ran before. Actually, when Tammy Baldwin ran the last time, Eric Hovde was in the primary with Tommy Thompson and Mark Newman. Eric didn't win that primary. Tommy Thompson did, went head-to-head with Tammy and lost. So Eric's thrown his hat in the ring. He's already his ads are already up on TV. Well, one ad is up on TV. Eric is a self-made, businessman. He's a hedge fund guy. And he's decided to throw his hat in. As far as I know, there's not going to be a Republican primary of any merit. I think Eric figures, he can put some of his own money in, and other people can put money in, and he can run relatively successfally against Tammy Baldwin. Again, Tammy Baldwin's a good campaigner, Jim. I don't like much of it all.
She's taken lots of money in.
She has, and she works hard. I'm not gonna knock her for that. She's a hard candidate to beat because she works hard herself. I disagree with basically everything that Tammy Baldwin has done when she was in our state legislature and when serving in as our state senator, our U.S. senator now. She and Mark Pocan lead the congressional caucus on the LGBTQ issue. She is openly homosexual, as is Mark Pocan. And Tammy doesn't make any, she doesn't hide from that. So that's the game. That's the game that's setting up here with Eric Hovde and Tammy Baldwin.
So more to come here in this fall's election. So looking back at some state legislation, we saw that the legislature had passed some tax breaks for the people of Wisconsin to give some tax relief, get us more on parallel with other states. And Governor Evers decided to veto those pieces.
Well, this is not the first set of tax cuts that the state legislature has given Governor Evers within this session. He's vetoed all of them, all of them. What the legislature was trying to do, Jim, was to say, all right, we have about $4 billion of taxpayer money sitting in a surplus account. That's more than we need for a
This is money we have overcharged the people of the state of Wisconsin.
Exactly. So I'm going to repeat this so everybody understands it. No level of government, no unit of government has one dime unless we, the people, give it to them through some form of taxation or fees. That's the way it goes. So that's our money sitting there. So the state legislature was looking for really good ways to give back to the people of Wisconsin to keep more in our own pockets. So they went for a middle class tax cut. They were looking for a way to give more to married couples, and they were also talking about increasing the child tax credit. And the governor basically has said on at least 2 of these, nope, we're not going to do them. Just vetoed them out of hand.
One of these are even for retirees here in the state of Wisconsin.
One was for retirees. And somebody's going to say, why is that important? I'll give you 2 reasons why it's important. Retirees right now, it's hard to compete with Florida, Arizona, the Carolinas and everything with weather, right? Mm-hmm. But we need them here. They are many of them are still earning money in some way, so they're adding to the economy, first of all. But secondly, our families need their extended families around these days, especially. How many grandparents are helping to bring up the next generation? How many are providing child care for the work, for their kids who now have kids and they need help with that? They can really help that. Wisconsin needs strong families headed by strong marriages and bolstered by strong extended families to really be able to build a Wisconsin that's prosperous and sustainable. So we were trying to find an incentive for retired people to stay here and not go to a state, where there's no income tax. Those states are very attractive. It's not just weather. It's our tax burden that we put on them. Vetoed them.
Yeah, governor says, see you later.
Yeah.
See you later. There was another one, though, about expanding the child tax credit, AB 1023, that is still lurking on the governor's desk. We don't know whether he's going to veto this one or not, to expand that child tax credit.
Well, it was a surprise to me that he didn't include this in the package. And maybe part of this is that he actually is going to do something where he said, I'm all about kids. I mean, he's the former educator, the former state superintendent of public instruction. Maybe he's had a pause over this one. And he thinks that if he doesn't veto this one, that it makes he can campaign on that next time. I don't know. I don't understand the pause, but I fully, to be honest with you, I would expect him to veto it.
We've got about close to a dozen bills, and we're going to do them in about 45 seconds each or less, if we can here.
I'm with you.
This is Assembly Bill 510, and the Parental Bill of Rights. This is something that passed in the Assembly and the Senate.
It is. It's about 16 distinct rights that are protected. And it has not yet gone to the governor. So it's still ready to go, but not there yet. But it has passed, and the governor vetoed it last time that was presented in the last session.
This is a bill many would be interested in. It's actually a constitutional amendment. First consideration, Senate Joint Resolution 54, that would give the freedom to gather in places of worship during a state of emergency.
Well, this was first consideration, but what this is about COVID and how the governor came very, very close to shutting down churches. And did for some of them, yeah. We couldn't meet. How you did communion and all the rest of that. The government had no place in that. So this is a bill. This is an amendment to our Constitution. Would have to pass in one more legislative session, and then go to the people for a vote.
Okay, so it's passed through the first time.
It has.
Okay. Here's Assembly Joint Resolution 112. This is also a constitutional amendment, though this one is one that would prohibit the governor from using his partial veto authority to create or increase any tax or fee. Okay,
Governor in Wisconsin has the most powerful veto pen in the country. Still, we've already limited a little bit. This one is because of what he did in the budget this year when he said, okay, we're going to have a $325, it was supposed to be a $325 per student increase for one school year. He, through the pen, changed it to $2,400 and something, so that over the next 400 years, the people of Wisconsin are on the hook for a $325 per student increase. That's got to stop. That's what this is all about.
Okay. So that has had, it's made its way through the first time?
First consideration. Got him 2 times through to amend the Constitution.
Here's another one, Senate Joint Resolution 71, and this is a constitutional amendment, second consideration, regarding eligibility to vote in the state of Wisconsin.
This one's going to be on the ballot in November.
In November.
In November. In fact, we already know what the question is. The question is pretty straightforward. The question is, shall we amend that article in the Constitution to provide that only a citizen age 18 or older who lives or who resides in an election district may vote in an election for national state? So in other words, we're trying to tighten down and make it very, very clear who is an eligible voter in Wisconsin.
So that'll be on the November ballot.
That'll be on the November ballot.
Okay, so more information as we get closer to then. Here's another constitutional amendment, Senate Joint Resolution number 73. And this would require a photo ID to vote.
And somebody's going to say, I thought we already have that law. We do, but nobody trusts the next legislature to keep that. So if you amend the Constitution, you make it a little harder to get it removed. So this is first consideration. It has to go through another election cycle, or another legislative cycle, excuse me, and then it can go to the people for a vote. But it's about whether or not we're going to have to prove who we are in order to vote.
This is an article that just appeared in the Epic Times, and the headline is Attorney General Merrick Garland calls voter ID laws unnecessary. Here's what he said. He said the declared efforts by states to implement voter ID laws are unnecessary and burdensome. He said there are many things that are open to debate in America. One thing that must not be open for debate is the right of all eligible citizens to vote and have their vote counted. He is fighting back against states that have passed bills requiring identification that would prove such eligibility to cast ballots.
Thinking people know that that's just nonsense.
Right.
Because we show photo ID for of so many things. And it's not hard to get a photo ID from the state, especially in Wisconsin. We make that extremely easy. If you don't have a driver's license, you can get a state ID, issued ID card, a military card if you're military. They accept a college student ID card. This is not difficult. It is not burdensome. It is an appropriate check to make sure that we are who we are, say we are, when we go to the polls to vote.
Okay. Assembly Bill 610 has passed as well. This is a legislation that would give waivers from immunization at institutions of higher education, colleges, universities.
Right. This is passed in the Assembly, but not yet in the Senate. Senate will probably be on the floor taking up this kind of bill next week. But that's basically what they said. You know what? If you're going to go to an institution of higher learning, you cannot force a student to take an immunization, because our immunization exceptions right now are just for K-12. But they say, nope, we're going to make them apply to institutions of higher learning. And oh, by the way, you higher education personnel, you got to make sure these people know they can take the exception, and you can't make them have to give an explanation for why they're going to take it. So this is a pushback to try to protect our college students.
You've been on this program before. We've talked about the push for medical marijuana in the state. It looks like that's going to be a dead issue.
It is, because the thing that made me chuckle all the way, through this was, the state is going to have 5 dispensaries run by the state to dispense this medical marijuana. And Robin Vos has said recently, nope, we're not going to do it anymore, because he got such pushback from his caucus about the 5 dispensaries run by the state. I think part of that, Jim, was it just took out all the entrepreneurial efforts that people might want to have, their own dispensaries. So anyway, that's done. We're done with that issue.
I do want to point out just a couple bills have been introduced. And Jelaine, last time you were on with us, you said the session is winding down, and there's been over 100 pieces of legislation introduced since you were on with us last month, including this that came out on February 23rd. It's Assembly Bill 1112. It has a companion, Senate Bill 1019. But this would actually create the Council for Equity and Inclusion and an Office for Equity and Inclusion in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, this is the Democrats flexing their muscles, saying, okay, if we get in, this is what we're going to do. And they want to set up this council and this office and have it funded. Jim, as I read through that bill, I was amazed at how many people they think should be employed to do this. It's a sizable number of people that they think should be there, and all it's about is making sure that their friends in the LGBTQ plus community are given special rights and protections again. That's all that's about.
But the more equity and inclusion laws we put into place and officers, the more divided we become.
Of course we do. Of course, that's the point. They're talking about unity, but what they're putting in place always divides. It divides because it sets people in special little pockets.
Well, let me just mention this in closing here tonight, and we'll have some time on the phones. We'll give out the phone number, so friends get ready right away to call. This is Senate Bill 1065 that would prohibit what they're calling conversion therapy.
Well, this is a repeat bill. It was in the last session too, and it basically tries to say, if you're a counselor, if you're a licensed therapist, counselor, whatever in this state, you cannot tell someone that they shouldn't be going through transition. You can encourage them, you can assist them, you can champion them, but you can't tell them it's a bad idea. You can't dissuade them, or you could stand to lose your license. That's essentially what it's doing. So conversion therapy is not shock therapy. It's not scary stuff. It's not berating people or, belittling them.
It's counseling.
It's counseling. It's talk therapy. It's for us as believers, it's biblical therapy. It's biblical talk and counseling. So this is an attempt to shut down that kind of language coming from licensed. And by the way, we do have Christian counselors in our state who are licensed. I know some, and they know that this is an abrogation of their First Amendment right of free speech.
And this would prohibit that from taking place.
It would prohibit it completely. You can do anything, you can affirm, extol, champion, but you can't say this is a bad idea or try to dissuade them.
Now, friends, this was just introduced last week. Last week, Tuesday, was introduced, and as such, there's not enough legislative time for anything for hearings or anything, but again, gives us an idea of where certain members of the legislature are going, and if there is a power shift that takes place there, what we can expect in the future. We'd like to open some phone lines here tonight. We had more to talk about, but friends, if you have a question you'd like to ask about any of these topics of discussion tonight, from the elections for this spring to this fall, the photo ID issues, the bills that we just talked about here, things Governor has vetoed, the redistricting maps, pick up your phone, give us a call tonight, 414-935-3030. That's 414-935-3030. Toll free, it's 800-733-8830. And if you'd like to text in your question or comment, you can text it to 414-439-3585. Again, that's 414-439-3585. We have less than a quarter hour remaining, only about a dozen minutes, and we'd like to take your questions that you have or your brief comments here tonight, and we'll address those best we can. Jelaine Appling with us from Wisconsin Family Council this evening, talking about all these issues. And Jelaine, your organization is one that keeps people abreast of what's going on through emails, through radio broadcasts, through text messages and everything else to help get the word out. And it really would be wise for people to get engaged with Wisconsin Family Council.
Well, I hope they will. I mean, you know, Jim, in May, we're looking at 38 years of this. And we do watch these bills, and we watch them closely, and we try to keep people informed about them and let them know the impact that these bills have on their family, because legislation does impact our lives. Local does, certainly, state level does, federal level does. We try to focus on that state level for us. You know, it's not hard to contact us. We try not to abuse our contacts with people, but we do want them to be informed, especially going into an election year. You know, we always say, well, this is the most important election. Well, every election is important. And this particular election, with so much writing on it, we want people to know, how did the incumbent legislators vote? What did they vote the way that would support our values, or did they not? So, by the way, we're coming out with a legislative scorecard that will give people information on how incumbents performed. So these are things to watch for as people get ready to vote.
Okay, this is from Al in South Milwaukee. He says, Jelaine, I started disliking you since I thought you were so political. Now I see the blessing and apologize, especially since I saw your heart talking to students. Another note, removing Trump from our right to vote as a Republican is a Democratic ploy to take away our right to vote freely and fairly. So, Jelaine, somebody who said, that Jelaine, she was just too political. Now I'm thankful for what you're doing.
Well, you know, I've been accused of lots of things over these 26 and a half years. Being political is one of them. I think I'm biblical. That's what I want to be.
Right.
I want to be faithful, and I want to be biblical. If we don't, Jim, if we don't start understanding that the attack is on, we are in the crosshairs. We are totally in the crosshairs. So thank you, Al. Yes, it was a political ploy to keep us from voting by trying to keep Trump off the ballot. Like I said, love him or hate him, he should be on the ballot.
We have Kelly from Mayville. Kelly, you're on the air.
Hi, I just wanted to comment. I thank God about that medical marijuana, because that's just the first step in trying to legalizing it, and I hope they don't even do medical marijuana. So that's my comment.
Great.
Good.
Thank you, Kelly, for that. And Jelaine, I'm confident you don't disagree, because the camel's nose is in the tent. First of all, we're going to put these tight restrictions like no other state has. And we're going to be sure that we don't go this direction. Look what's going on in Oregon right now. They legalized all these drugs, and their drug problems are just off the charts. Not only how people are overdosing and everything else, and it affects, you said we don't have to be 18 or 21 to do this. Guess what? Young people see it, they do it, and now they're trying to reverse their laws to
And once
keep
the
this from
toothpaste's
happening.
out of the tube or the cat's out of the bag, it's really hard to put the toothpaste back and put the cat back in the bag.
Right.
And Oregon's going to have a mess. And you're exactly right. This is a first step. And the body doesn't know any difference whether I'm doing it for medical reasons or for recreational reasons. So it's still affecting my mind, and it's affecting people's driving and all the rest. So,
Friends, our phone number 414-935-3030 for your calls. 414-935-3030. To text in your comment or question, send us your first name and the city that you're texting from to 414-439-3585. We've got Kathy in Milwaukee. Hi, Kathy. You're on the air.
Hi. I heard a comment that she said Senator Baldwin, Tammy Baldwin, is a hard worker. What has she actually done? Nothing, as far as I'm concerned. What do you think she actually did?
well, when I said that she was a hard worker, she's a hard campaigner. Okay? I don't agree with what she's done politically, but she works, in other words, she goes out, she knocks on doors, she attends events, she shows up at places where she needs to. How you perform as an elected official versus how you campaign can be very, very different. But Tammy Baldwin knows that in order to win a statewide race, she has to work really hard. Not every candidate understands that. So I agree with you. I'm not happy with what she's done as a senator, not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Great,
Kathy.
Thank you. And if you had to point to what legislation has she championed, no, but if you talk about, the pressing the flesh, so to speak, and campaigning, she's been very...
She's very effective.
Effective and raising funds.
Yep.
She's been very effective.
She has.
Okay, let's go next to, let's see, this would be Lynn in West Dallas. Hi, Lynn, you're on the air.
Hi. I thought a small part of the two-part question that you had at the beginning, but I didn't catch the first part, so I'm looking to have an explanation of the...
Okay.
Okay, I have it here, Lynn. The question involves, it says, question 1, use of private funds in election administration. Shall Section 7(1) of Article 3 of the Constitution be created to provide that private donations and grants may not be applied for, accepted, expended, or used in connection with the conduct of any primary, election, or referendum? In other words, will we as Wisconsin, the electorate, do we want outside money coming in to influence our election process here in our state? That this is about the Zuckerbucks that came in during 2020 to places like Green Bay and Eau Claire and Racine and Milwaukee and Madison, and they were used to drive a certain segment of the population to the polls. So that's what that's talking about.
Okay, and that would be a no, we don't want that.
Well,
A yes vote means that you're rejecting the money, that we're not going to allow that in the state of Wisconsin. So yes is saying, no, we don't want this here in our state.
and no means I want it to happen. I wouldn't be bothered if it happens again. That's basically what it's saying.
Yeah. So a yes vote means to stop it, the Zuckerbucks, and a no vote would be just the opposite.
Keep it going.
Keep it going.
Okay. Well, I just want to say I appreciate these kind of explanations because sometimes the questions are confusing, and having it cleared up for us to understand it better is really good, because a lot of people go and have no idea what they're answering. And so I just appreciate the work you do.
Great. Thank you so much, Lynn, for your call.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Jelaine, a couple of texts and questions here. Individual here, this would be, let's see a name, but it says, if I read and heard correctly, Washington County was mentioned in that referendum for Milwaukee Public Schools. Does Jelaine know anything about that? I didn't see any Washington County school as part of MPS. That's actually part of the question, though, isn't it?
It is, and I wondered about that. I wondered if that meant there must be some school in Washington County that is part of the Milwaukee public school system. I don't know exactly what that would be, but that's exactly what it showed. The Milwaukee Public Schools, Milwaukee and Washington counties, Wisconsin. So MPS must bleed into Washington County at some point in that northern portion of Milwaukee County.
Okay. And then Mike from Milwaukee, the huge amount of money for school tax increase is insane. Let's remember the aldermen and women got, he said 15%, nearly $20,000. We're all hurting but them.
Well, You know, we talked at length about this. This is a there's a tax burden there's a critical mass in tax burden, or a critical point in tax burden that people can sustain, and other people, and at some point the people say, no, we've had enough.
Right, and they move out.
And they either, well, isn't that already happening? Last time I checked, Milwaukee did not have a huge influx of people into the county or into the city for lots of reasons. Part of it, this kind of the fees.
Look what's happening to New York, to California, to the state of Illinois. It's flight.
Well, of course it will. People will only live under that kind of burden for so long before they say, where can I go to find a different place? We were talking about retirees leaving here because the tax burden is such that it's better for them to move to a state where there's no income tax.
Right.
So I don't know where that line is for Milwaukee, Jim, but it's got to be close. And the state, I want to reiterate, the state legislature not so long ago was considering what they could do to rescue Milwaukee from bankruptcy.
Right, right. And we get a tax increase, we get raises of salaries, and then we get hit with another school tax for the city of Milwaukee.
Well, and you got this wonderful tram or whatever that thing is coming in.
Jelaine, for those who'd like more information about Wisconsin Family Council, how can they connect with you?
Best way to do it is through our website at wifamilycouncil.org, or you can call us at 888-378-7395. We do answer our phones.
Okay. Again, that's 1-888-378-7395. Let's also give you the legislative hotline number. We talked about a number of bills as well. You can reach out to your legislators and communicate with them. 800-362-9472. That's 800-362-9472. And listening friend, please do not forget to go to myvote.wi.gov and take a look at your sample ballot, myvote.wi.gov. Just click on the little blue icon, what's on my ballot, and be informed. We're just weeks away from this election, and Jelaine, very important that we be informed and we go and cast a prayerful vote.
Absolutely. At myvote.wi.gov, you can talk about registration, you can get your absentee ballot applied for, you can do a number of things there. It's a good place for people to go. Be informed, be knowledgeable, responsible, and as you always say, as believers, we need to be prayerful.
Indeed. And friends, you can find out where you cast your vote there on that site as well. Jelaine, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jim.
Jelaine Appling from Wisconsin Family Council with our monthly legislative update, being back on election eve here on April the 1st to cover more critical issues facing us in our state. Good night. May God richly bless you.